Caleb Rivers was just looking for work, a chance to put food on the table for his 10-year-old daughter. When a last-minute job fixing a broken fence at an old ranch came his way, he didn't ask questions. But when he arrived at Whitmore Ranch, he found more than just a struggling farm. He found Nora Whitmore, a woman who had inherited more land than she could handle, a past she couldn't outrun, and a powerful enemy who would do anything to take it from her. What started as a simple job turned into a battle for something bigger, a fight for a home, a legacy, and maybe even love. But would Caleb stay long enough to realize that sometimes the best things in life aren't the ones you plan for? If you love heartfelt stories about second chances, resilience, and unexpected love, then stick around. This one's for you. And hey, if you enjoy powerful, emotional stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another one. Now let's dive in. It all started with a broken fence. The scent of pine wood and engine oil clung to Caleb Rivers' worn-out flannel shirt as he steered his rusted pickup truck along the winding road into Redwood Valley. The town, nestled between rolling green hills, carried an air of quiet resilience, much like the man himself. He tightened his grip on the wheel, casting a glance at his 10-year-old daughter, Lily, who sat beside him, humming softly to herself. "Are we there yet?" she asked, her excitement barely contained. "Almost," Caleb replied, forcing a small smile. He wished he shared her enthusiasm, but all he could think about was the sheer necessity of this job. For months, work had been scarce, and bills had piled up faster than he could pay them. Being a single father wasn't easy, especially after losing his wife, but he had promised Lily that he would find them a home, a real home. Not just a temporary stopgap between jobs. This job, fixing up an old ranch, might just buy them a little more time. As they pulled up to the entrance, the sight of the Whitmore Ranch took Caleb by surprise. He had expected a simple, run-down farmhouse, but instead, a vast stretch of land stretched beyond what the eye could see, framed by oak trees that had likely stood for over a century. The wooden fence was battered, half fallen, and the barn's red-painted faded into a dull rust, but something about the place still held an undeniable charm. Lily's eyes lit up. "It looks like something out of a storybook." Caleb wasn't so sure about that. To him, it looked like a heap of work. Stepping out of the truck, Caleb caught sight of a woman standing by the front porch of the ranch house, her arms crossed over her chest. She exuded an air of quiet authority, dressed in dark jeans and a crisp white blouse, her auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Eleanor Nora Whitmore. Caleb had only spoken to her once over the phone. Her voice had been cool, businesslike, making it clear that she wanted this job done quickly. Now, meeting her in person, she seemed even more guarded. "You're late," Nora said, her sharp green eyes scanning him before landing on Lily. "I didn't realize you'd be bringing your daughter." Caleb tensed slightly but kept his tone even. "She's no trouble, just tagging along." Nora hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, follow me." She led them through the property, pointing out the fence that needed repairing, the leaking roof of the barn, and the unstable beams in the horse stables. Caleb listened intently, mentally calculating how much time each job would take. "This place must have been beautiful once," Lily murmured, touching the aged wood of the barn. Nora froze for half a second before responding, her tone clipped. "That was a long time ago." Caleb noticed the tension in her voice. There was more to this woman than she let on, but he wasn't about to pry. His job was to fix the ranch, not dig into its owner's past. "So what's your deadline?" Caleb asked as they circled back to the house. "The sooner the better," Nora said. She hesitated, then added, "I'm planning to sell." That caught Caleb off guard. "Sell? Why go through all this trouble? Fixing it up? Because an unmaintained ranch won't fetch the price I need." Her voice was even, but there was something in her eyes, something guarded, as if she was trying to convince herself of the decision as much as him. Lily, who had been quietly exploring, suddenly spoke up. "Why would you want to sell this place? It feels important." Nora didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past them toward the open fields where the wind swayed through the tall grass. "Because it's just land," she finally said. "Nothing more." Caleb knew that wasn't true. He had worked on enough properties to know that land, especially family land, was never just land. Still, it wasn't his place to say. "I'll get started in the morning," he said instead. Nora gave a curt nod. "Good." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "The house has a spare room. If you'd rather not commute every day, you and Lily can stay here for the duration of the project." Caleb stiffened. He wasn't expecting that. He had planned to drive back and forth, sleeping in motels if necessary, but this would certainly make things easier. Still, why would a wealthy woman like her offer them a place to stay? Something about this job wasn't adding up. As the sun dipped lower, Caleb decided to take one last look at the barn before calling it a day. Pushing open the heavy doors, he inhaled the scent of aged wood, dust, and something oddly familiar, like old letters left in a forgotten attic. Lily followed him inside, her gaze wandering across the abandoned horse stalls. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing to a dusty old trunk tucked away in the shadows. Caleb crouched down and carefully unlatched it. The hinges creaked as the lid lifted, revealing a collection of old photographs, leather-bound journals, and a yellowed envelope, sealed but never sent. He picked it up, studying the faded handwriting. Eleanor Whitmore. Caleb frowned. This letter had been meant for Nora, yet it had been left here, unopened for years. Behind him, Lily asked the question already forming in his own mind. "Do you think she knows this is here?" Caleb glanced toward the house, where Nora Whitmore stood alone on the porch, arms crossed, staring at the distant fields, as if looking for something she had lost. Something told him that this ranch wasn't just land to her, no matter what she claimed. And for the first time since taking this job, Caleb had the sinking feeling that fixing fences and repairing roofs wouldn't be the hardest part of his work here. The morning sun spilled golden light over Whitmore Ranch, casting long shadows across the weathered wooden fence as Caleb Rivers stepped onto the porch, inhaling the crisp, earthy air. The stillness of the place was deceiving. It held too many secrets for his liking. He had barely finished his coffee when Lily came bounding down the steps, her messy ponytail swinging with each bounce. "Dad, are we gonna tell her?" she asked, eyes wide with excitement. Caleb sighed, rubbing a hand over his stubbled jaw. He knew what she meant, the letter they had found in the barn last night, the one addressed to Eleanor Nora Whitmore, unopened, and for what looked like years. "No," he said simply. Lily frowned. "But it's not our business," Caleb cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. Lily pouted but didn't argue. She had learned early on that her father's word was final. Still, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that the letter meant something. It wasn't just another piece of old paper lost to time. It was left there for a reason. And Nora? She was definitely hiding something. By mid-morning, Caleb had thrown himself into work, stripping down the rotting wooden fence that ran along the property's edge. The rhythmic swing of his hammer, the scent of fresh lumber. It was familiar, grounding, anything to keep his mind off that letter. A few yards away, Nora stood by the stable, arms crossed, watching him work. "Do you always tear things apart before fixing them?" she called out. Caleb wiped sweat from his brow, eyeing her. "Can't fix something properly without knowing how broken it is." Nora held his gaze for a moment before nodding. "I suppose that makes sense." He sensed she wasn't just talking about fences. As the day wore on, Nora remained on the outskirts, observing but never engaging. It was as if she wanted to distance herself from everything, the land, the work, even the memories attached to this place. By late afternoon, Caleb found himself in the barn again, sorting through old supplies. The trunk sat exactly where they had left it, the letter still tucked inside. He should have walked away, left it buried like everything else in this place, but something made him pick it up. The envelope felt fragile, yet heavy, as if the words inside carried more weight than the paper itself. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, like someone had taken great care in writing it. Before he could think better of it, his thumb ran along the sealed edge, planning to read someone else's. Mail? Caleb stiffened at the sound of Nora's voice, low and unreadable, from the barn entrance. Slowly, Caleb turned, holding up the letter but making no move to open it. "Found this yesterday," he said evenly. "Seems like it was meant for you." Nora didn't move closer. Her face remained impassive, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe even pain. She didn't reach for the letter. "Where did you find it?" "In the trunk back there." Caleb nodded toward the shadows of the barn. "Looked like it's been there a long time." A long silence stretched between them. Then softly, "It's from my mother, isn't it?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "So she did know." "I don't know," he admitted. "It has your name on it." Never opened. Nora swallowed hard, but her exterior remained composed. "I appreciate you bringing it to me." She made no move to take it. Caleb frowned. "You're not even curious." For the first time since meeting her, something broke in her gaze. Just for a second, a flicker of something raw, unguarded. "Some things are better left unread," she murmured before turning on her heel and walking out of the barn. Caleb watched her go, the letter still clutched in his hand, and felt the distinct, uneasy sense that this ranch wasn't the only thing in need of repair. That night, Lily insisted on sleeping in the old guest room Nora had offered them. Caleb, ever the cautious father, had wanted to drive back to town every night, but something told him this job wasn't just about fixing fences anymore. Sitting on the porch after dinner, he found himself nursing a beer as Nora stepped outside, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm evening air. "Lily seems to like it here," Nora noted, her voice softer than before. "She likes anywhere she can run free," Caleb admitted. "Not much space for that back home." Nora hesitated. "Where is home?" Caleb exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Used to be Dallas. Moved around a lot since then. Haven't really settled anywhere since my wife passed." A beat of silence. "I'm sorry." Caleb glanced at her, surprised. There was genuine sincerity in her voice. "It was a long time ago," he said, "still figuring things out." Nora studied him for a moment. "So that's why you took this job?" Caleb chuckled dryly. "I took this job because I needed the money." Then after a pause, "But maybe there's more to it than that." Something shifted in her gaze. Maybe, just maybe, she understood what he meant. As the night deepened, clouds began gathering in the distance, blotting out the stars. Lily, curled up in the guest room, slept soundly. Caleb, however, lay awake, thoughts buzzing like cicadas in the night. He thought about the letter still tucked away in his truck, about Nora's refusal to face whatever truths lay inside. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt invested in something bigger than just surviving. Because Whitmore Ranch wasn't just land. It was a history waiting to be uncovered, a future waiting to be decided, and somehow, against all logic, he had become part of it. The storm arrived in the dead of night, sweeping through Whitmore Ranch like a restless ghost. Wind howled against the windows, rattling the old wooden beams of the house. The rain pounded the earth in a relentless rhythm, drenching the fields and flooding the dirt paths that wound through the property. Caleb Rivers lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm's fury. Something about this place unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite explain. The land, the house, even its owner, everything carried a weight, a history that refused to be buried. He turned his head toward the nightstand, where the unopened letter still sat, untouched since his conversation with Nora. She had refused to take it. But why? A loud crash split the air. Caleb was on his feet instantly. From across the hall, Lily's voice came, groggy but alert. "Dad? It's okay, sweetheart. Stay here," he called back as he grabbed his boots and pulled on a jacket. The front door banged open with the force of the wind. Rain lashed against his face as he stepped onto the porch, squinting into the darkness. Then he saw it. One of the large oak trees had come crashing down onto the stable roof. Forgetting the cold, forgetting the rain, Caleb sprinted toward the barn. He barely registered the sound of another set of footsteps rushing behind him. "Nora!" He turned just as she caught up. She was soaked to the bone, her hair wild from the wind, but she barely seemed to notice. "There are still horses inside," she gasped. Without hesitation, they pushed open the heavy barn doors. The interior was in chaos, hay scattered everywhere, broken beams hanging at precarious angles. A panicked whinny echoed through the space. "Damn it," Caleb muttered. "Where are they?" Nora pointed toward the back stalls. "They're trapped." Without thinking, Caleb hurled his shoulder against a fallen beam, shoving it aside to clear a path. The wood groaned in protest, but it shifted just enough. Nora rushed past him, murmuring softly to the terrified animals. They trusted her. That much was clear. Caleb grabbed one of the ropes and looped it around the first horse's neck. "Come on, buddy," he coaxed. "Let's get you out of here." Together, they led the horses one by one into the storm, guiding them towards safety. The last mare refused to move, eyes rolling in fear as thunder rumbled overhead. Caleb glanced at Nora. "Talk to her." She hesitated for only a second before placing a gentle hand on the mare's muzzle, whispering something only the horse could hear. Slowly, the mare calmed, allowing Caleb to guide her out. By the time the last animal was free, both of them were soaked and exhausted. But the barn, at least what was left of it, was empty. For a long moment, they just stood there, rain pouring, around them, breathless, hearts still hammering from the rush of adrenaline. Nora turned to him, and for the first time, she didn't look like a woman who wanted to run away. "Thank you," she said. Caleb held her gaze. For what? For not giving up. He wasn't sure if she was talking about the horses anymore. Back at the house, Lily was waiting by the door, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide. "Are the horses okay?" she asked. "They're fine," Caleb reassured her. "Go back to bed." Lily hesitated, then grinned. "I think Miss Nora likes you," Caleb huffed. "Go to bed, Lily." With a giggle, she disappeared into her room, shaking his head. He turned to find Nora watching him. "Your daughter's perceptive," she murmured. "She's got an imagination," Caleb countered. Nora didn't argue. Instead, she walked past him toward the kitchen, where she pulled out a bottle of whiskey and poured 2 glasses. She slid one across the table. "For the storm," she said. Caleb took a slow sip, watching her carefully. "You said earlier that I don't give up." Nora nodded. Caleb exhaled. "You seem like someone who gave up on this place a long time ago." A flicker of something crossed her face. Not anger, but something close to it. She leaned back against the counter, gripping her glass tightly. "When I left this ranch, I told myself I'd never come back," she admitted. "This land, it carries too many ghosts." Caleb studied her, waiting. Then, quietly, she said it. "My mother died here. The air shifted." Caleb hadn't expected that. Nora set her glass down with a soft clink, staring at the countertop as if gathering herself. "I was 15, she continued, voice controlled, but barely. "My mother, she wasn't happy here. She wanted to leave, but my father, he wouldn't hear of it." A bitter smile flickered across her lips. "One night they fought. I don't even remember what about anymore. She ran out into the storm." just like this one. Caleb's chest tightened. They found her the next morning by the riverbank. Nora swallowed hard. She slipped, hit her head on the rocks, that was it. Silence filled the space between them, heavy, unspoken. Now Caleb understood why she wanted to sell, why she didn't care about the land, why she hadn't opened that letter. "She wrote to you," he said softly. Nora blinked, startled. Caleb pulled the letter from his jacket pocket, placing it on the table between them. "Maybe it's time to..." "Read it." Nora stared at the envelope, fingers trembling slightly as she reached for it. The past had found her, whether she wanted it to or not, and for the first time she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep running from it. The letter sat untouched on the kitchen table, its yellowed edges curling slightly, a silent relic of a past that Nora Whitmore had spent years trying to forget. She could feel Caleb Rivers' steady gaze on her as she traced the faded ink of her name. The weight of it was unbearable. She had been 15 when her mother had died, 15 when she had packed her bags and left this place behind, vowing never to return. And now, against every wall she had built, the past had come knocking. She exhaled sharply. "I don't know if I can do this." Caleb didn't press. He simply leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said, "No one's forcing you." That was the thing about Caleb. He never pushed, never demanded. He just stood there, steady and unshakable, as if waiting for her to find her own way. And maybe that's why she picked up the letter. With a trembling breath, she broke the seal and unfolded the fragile paper. "My dearest Eleanor, I know you hate me right now. Maybe you always will, but I need you to know that I love you, and I always will. This ranch was never my home, not the way it was for you and your father. But I stayed because I loved you both, and I know that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. I wish I could tell you this in person, but if you're reading this, then I never got the chance. I just need you to remember one thing. You were never the reason I was unhappy. You were my greatest joy. I hope one day you'll come back and see this place not as a prison, but as part of who you are. With all my love." Mom Nora clenched the paper between her fingers, her throat tightening. The words blurred before her eyes, the ink smudging slightly from where a tear had fallen. For years, she had believed that her mother had wanted to escape from her, that she had run away that night not just from the ranch, but from her. And now, with just a few lines of ink, everything she thought she knew had changed. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as she forced herself to breathe. She didn't hate it here, she murmured, barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded, his expression unreadable. No, she didn't. Silence stretched between them, heavy, unspoken. And then Lily's small voice cut through the tension. "That's why you wanted to sell it, isn't it?" Both adults turned to see the 10-year-old standing in the doorway, her oversized sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder, her expression softer than a child her age should ever wear. "You didn't want to keep something that reminded you of her." Nora opened her mouth, then closed it. It was the truth, simple and undeniable. But now she wasn't so sure. The next morning the storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and clear. But inside Whitmore Ranch, the weight of the previous night still lingered. Nora stood on the porch, letter still clutched in her hands, watching as Caleb worked on the fence, his movements sure and steady. He made things look so simple, but nothing about this was simple. She had come back to sell. That had always been the plan. Fix it up, get the best price and walk away. So why did the thought of leaving now feel so wrong? The land stretched before her, golden under the morning sun, and for the first time in years, she saw it the way she had as a child. Not as a place of loss, but as a place that still had something left to give, and that terrified her. As if on cue, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway, kicking up dust as it came to a halt. Nora's jaw clenched. She knew that car. Hank Dawson stepped out, adjusting the cuffs of his too expensive suit, a smug smile already in place. Well, he drawled, eyeing the property. Looking better already.